Galen Marek, Starkiller, perhaps requires no introduction to the Star Wars fanbase. He is one of the most physically impressive lightsaber combatants in all of Star Wars lore, legends and canon included, able to contend with some of the most formidable of his lifetime. Known formally as Starkiller, and the secret apprentice to Lord Vader, Galen Marek has grown into one of the most powerful lightsaber wielders in the entire galaxy. But what made Galen Marek Starkiller such a gifted swordsman? What styles of lightsaber combat does Starkiller show a preference towards? And what made him such a formidable fighter, especially against the likes of Darth Vader? Today, we will be answering that question. Let's dive into why Starkiller is so dangerous, and the lightsaber combat styles that he seems to show a preference towards. And let's deduce the exact style of lightsaber combat, the form that he uses, and why. For this video, we'll be breaking down his style into two parts, as he seems to change his methodology between games after he is eventually cloned in The Force Unleashed 2. As we have surmised that Galen and Starkiller, the clone that is, use different forms and variations of combat. However, they are similar. Therefore, we will be starting with the first game and Galen Marek, before exploring the progression of his style and how it evolved and is carried into the second iteration. First though, according to our analytics, a lot of you guys that watch the channel haven't actually subscribed yet, so if you want to stay up to date with everything Star Wars lore related, deep, and canon, force crush that subscribe button. During the events of the first Force Unleashed game, Galen Marek had been seen using Juyo, otherwise known as Form VII, which is one of the most erratic and unpredictable of lightsaber combat styles that are known. In fact, it was even forbidden among the Jedi. Commonly used by the likes of Darth Maul, Form VII is a particular favorite of various Sith Lords due to its violent nature, as they use the dark side of the Force to bolster their output. It is far easier to channel dark side energy into Form VII more than any other style, as it doesn't rely on the composure of a wielder. Instead, it allows a user to be unpredictable and violent, giving it an inherent sense of brutality and unpredictability, as no variations and styles of Form VII are ever the same. He was interestingly able to pair this with Form V variation known as Xian, which is marked as the iconic backhanded style grip only seen on a few occasions in Star Wars. Though this style is not particularly popular in the modern Star Wars era, there are multiple notable practitioners of the reverse-handed grip, including perhaps most famously Ahsoka Tano, who was taught the ways of Xian by her former master, Anakin Skywalker. Interesting, as both apprentices of Anakin and Lord Vader respectively adopted the style, as again, both Ahsoka and Starkiller were taught by the same master, and it's highly likely that Vader taught Starkiller this style in the same way that he had taught Ahsoka all those years ago, as he himself was an avid practitioner of Form V, both Anakin as well as Vader, though Vader and Anakin respectively preferred the Gem So variant over the Xian style, Gem So, which was far more aggressive, but still had the backbone of Xian. How this benefited Starkiller though, was it allowed him to pair a blend of a violent style with a relatively unorthodox blade use, making his moves even more unpredictable and much more difficult to follow, which impaired the defense of any of his enemies. This allowed Galen Marek to get an upper hand quickly by using a method that was difficult for his enemies to adapt to, and this granted him early victories on numerous occasions against very skilled swordsmen. For the duration of the first game, this seems to be the preferred style of Galen Marek, meshing his aggression and untamed violence with a unique and disorienting style in order to take opponents off guard long enough for him to take the upper hand, even taking on and defeating opponents such as Shaak Ti, who was a noted swordsman herself and council member, as well as defeating Darth Vader himself. It's also important to note that the pairing of Form V and Form VII was quite a rare one, however not unseen. While this style was incredibly efficient and brutal, his post-cloning form was a lightsaber of combat to be slightly different from this ideal of Galen Marek. And one might argue that his style choices in the second game and the clone are far more effective, but more on that in just a moment. After his cloning, Galen Marek, now Starkiller, takes on the same Xian style of lightsaber combat, but instead of pairing it with the Juyo style, he instead adopts the much more refined style of Niman Form 6. Niman, otherwise known as Form 6 lightsaber combat, was the culmination of the 5 styles that came before it, and this method is widely regarded as the most well-rounded lightsaber form. It took the styles before it and combined the strongest aspects of each form into one cohesive style of lightsaber combat, which allowed Jedi Knights to hold their own against a wide variety of different opponents. Widely known as the Jack-of-all-trades style, Masters of Niman were not masters of any specific lightsaber form, but they contributed the strengths of each style into their combat encounters, and could adapt rapidly based on any circumstance. This made Niman Masters some of the most adaptable lightsaber combatants known to the Star Wars lore, and they could quickly change their forms and approaches on the fly with any given situation, selecting which approach was the most effective in seconds. Perhaps one of the most famous users of this form was Syndraulic, one of the preeminent lightsaber combatant instructors in the Jedi Order, as Syndraulic was gifted the title of the Jedi Battle Master at the time. Concerning Starkiller though, it was Form 6 paired with the same Xi'an grip styles which helped Starkiller have a much more rounded approach to lightsaber combat, even superior than what Form 7 had attributed to him in the past. It had been said that Form 7 is one of the most physically demanding lightsaber styles, and is one of the most taxing methods of lightsaber combat that a Jedi or a Sith could adopt. This meant that Form 7 didn't have a particularly impressive longevity, and it was meant to be used in short bursts of brute force to end a fight quickly. What's interesting about Starkiller though, it appears as if he also uses parts of Form 4 Ataru, which is the second most physically demanding lightsaber style. This has a lot to do with his acrobatics, so to break it down very quickly, we believe that the first Starkiller, the original, used form variations such as Xi'an, Juyo, Form 7, and Form 4. However, we believe the second iteration of Starkiller used pieces of Form 6, especially because this Starkiller most notably used 2 lightsabers, known as the Jarkai dual blade fencing, a variation of Form 6. What should be noted though is that to some degree, it appears as if Starkiller the clone is proficient in all 7 forms of lightsaber combat, as he melds the likes of Xi'an into Jarkai dual blade fencing, as well as has the ferocity of a Form 7 and the acrobatics of a Form 4. But why do we believe that Starkiller was actually a better lightsaber duelist than Galen Marek? Previously, the use of strictly Form 7 meant that he was already a ferocious fighter, and he was able to overpower his opponents quickly. It meant that his violence and brutality could easily win fights in a short period of time, but he lacked the composure or defensive capabilities to carry a fight on longer for a prolonged period of time, and he had to build his stamina in order to utilize Form 7 effectively. However, Starkiller, after having mastered the agility that he needed, was able to reallocate his stamina into a use of Form 4, which was a much more controlled method of overpowering an opponent that didn't entail losing his composure or channeling the dark side tendencies. We also believe that this is because the Starkiller clone actually relies far more on the light side of the Force than the original Galen Marek did, which is why perhaps the Starkiller clone would have a much more difficult time tapping into Form 7 than the original Galen. What is most intriguing about Starkiller is he was not a master of any single form. He was adept enough to become a powerhouse of combat with multiple forms, marrying them each together simultaneously, and this is what allowed him to grow into one of the most dangerous fighters of his generation. It's perhaps even likely that Starkiller did not know the fundamentals of each form and simply picked the style that worked best for him, as again, Starkiller was trained as a weapon and not a true apprentice. In our breakdowns of lightsaber combatants though, you will definitely find Galen Marek and Starkiller among the most unique of them all, as the original Starkiller used a combination in a hybrid of Form 5 Xi'an and Form 7 Juyo, while the second iteration of Starkiller still used the foundation of Xi'an, the acrobatics yet composure of Ataru, and the versatility of Niman. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on Galen Marek and Starkiller, and our analysis on his lightsaber form and technique? Which of the 2 Starkillers do you believe is more powerful, and why? And as always, may the Force be with you, and I hope that you have a great day.